Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all? Okay, let me loosen you up a little bit. How about a quick joke? So, yeah, this guy goes to gets a gym membership. For 6 months, it's not working. He's going to gym in person next week to figure out what happened. Okay, good. So we're going to talk about how a website brought communities together at UCLA. And as we know, it's a basic human thing to be able to connect with each other and communities, right? So during COVID, that we had lost it all of a sudden, right? So we're going to talk about how we overcame that and how it sets precedents for future in how engagement happened. All right. So I am Praveen Dugar. I am Associate Director of Application Development and Database Systems at Student Affairs IT UCLA. And my co-host is Matthew Geddert. He is the manager of websites and user experience. Okay. So I'm going to focus more on the backend today, and Matthew will talk about front end. So here is Matthew.
Thanks, Praveen. Oh, yes. Okay, how do I juggle these? All right, I will do this. Okay, so problem. What are we here to talk about? Well, we're at a tech conference, so we're going to talk about backends and front ends, but that's not the meat of this talk. What we're talking about with the backends and front ends is how those things enable something else. And the thing that we're here to talk about is community at scale. And so as we learned in the keynote session, they talked about at scale. Scale makes things different, right? So community, I think we all sort of understand that. You've got your personal community, your like family, your friends, you got your colleagues, your work community, you've got your PTA and your book clubs and your sports leagues and whatever. But we all have these personal communities that we interact with. But at scale, things are a little different. And when you're talking about the problem at scale, you really have my communities interacting with, Praveen's communities and everyone in this room and everyone online, and, Jane, the researcher with her communities, and like some freshman student that's never been to college before, like their communities. And every single one of us has very, very different communities that we work with. And it looks a little like this. So each person connects to different communities. There might be tiny communities with like 2 people. There might be bigger communities with hundreds of people. Some of them are established, some of them aren't. And the unique thing about this is that every single one of these connections for every single person is different. Because even if you're twins or whatever, you still interact with different people because you're interacting with someone else, not yourself. And so when you're dealing with this kind of a scale, the problem really becomes everyone's different. So there is no I have the formula of these are the communities you need because you're a freshman. That doesn't work, right? And we have a very big problem of figuring out what communities you need to care about. Which ones do we need to introduce you to? Why is this interesting to you? Because I don't know everything about you. I might know a tiny slice about you, and I can recommend, hey, there's these small pieces about this that I know about that are good for you. But I can't say these are all of the connections that you need. So how have we done this in the past? How have universities done this? So this is an aerial view of UCLA. On the left up there, there's those bigger buildings, those are skyscrapers. That's where 98% of freshmen and sophomores live, and a high percentage of all of the juniors and seniors. Below that on the left, that's where the graduate students live in the neighborhoods, and there's UCLA owns a bunch of housing there. And then that's on a hill, and it's actually literally called the Hill. And then on the right side, that's all the classroom buildings and administrative buildings and stuff like that, where you go to class and you go to your lectures. And in the middle, there's this valley where you see the sports fields. And the thing that's a little bit unique about UCLA is that there is no really good way to get from the one hill to the other hill without going down this one pathway in the dead center. And that means that 20,000 people, multiple times per day, are going from their homes over to classes. And that's a thing that we call brew and walk. And lots of our college campuses have this, where everyone walks down the path, they see the posters, they see the people say, here, take my flyer zone, right? And so everybody has this kind of thing. And to talk a bit about how these kinds of things work, when you're walking by people, it's not like there's 200 voices yelling at you at once. There might be 2 or 3 or 4 voices from different things yelling at you, but you can sort of get a sense of here's the 2 or 3 things that I'm paying attention to. And the way that you walk by, or most people walk by, is I ignore you. But you also sometimes are like, hey, that might actually be interesting. I'm going to go talk to that person, or that flyer looks interesting. I'm going to pay attention to that, right? And so that's how this works. And I went here to Berkeley, and we did not have a geography where everyone was forced down the same road. And so like I avoided this zone because it was too much for me. It was like too much yelling. But at UCLA, you kind of can't avoid it in lots of times. And so this works quite well at UCLA when you're in person. So, okay, 2020 happened. And we all know that it looked like this. No one went anywhere with their cars. All the freeways were empty. And Brew and Walk, for the first time in 100 years, looked like this. And we're like, what are we going to do? Okay. So when you look at this problem, we were sort of gathered together thinking through, okay, we have this Brew and Walk isn't a viable option. And COVID's happening and people are hurting. And one of the main reasons that they're hurting is that they're isolated. And the way to solve the isolation problem is community. But we have no good way of introducing people to new communities. What do we do? Right? So we were talking about this and we thought, okay, well, universities are diverse, right? We know this. So you have your freshmen, you have your transfers, you have your first year students, your LGBTQ students, your international students, the Hong Kong Graduate Student Association, the Pre-Veterinary Society at UCLA, the Ninjutsu Club, the UCLA Staff Assembly, the UCLA Emeriti Association, and the softball club for the UCLA alumni in New York City. So this is really diverse. What do you do with this diversity for 40, 50,000 people? And so we broke it down and thought, okay, here are the main groups that we're going to think about. And so we have undergraduate students, graduate students, professional school students. For those of you that don't know, UCLA's professional schools, so that's like medical and lawyers and business, they operate on the semester system, and the rest of the school operates on a quarter system. So that's really fun when making calendar systems to deal with that problem. And then we have staff and faculty and alumni in the Los Angeles community. And so we got 1,500 student clubs and organizations. How do we work with them? We have hundreds of departments and programs. We probably have thousands. This is how many are using our systems. So that's why I limited it to hundreds. So how do we tackle this problem? So as is normally the case, you want to have a variety of diversity of opinions about how to tackle this problem. So we had people from student affairs. We're from student affairs IT, but we had other representatives from student affairs. We had alumni affairs involved. We got the Bruin Resource Center. That's sort of the undergraduate resource center that guides people towards resources. With the Graduate Student Resource Center, the college, which is academic departments, and the Associated Students of UCLA. And we were in these meetings discussing how do we develop community in COVID? How do we deal with the fact that there's 6,357 freshmen, I think it was, that year coming in a few months in fall? What do we do? And so we quickly realized, we were discussing this, that there's a lot that we had to deal with regarding haves and have-nots. And so when you hear this, the default thing you think about is like, oh, there's the people that have money, and there's the people that don't have money. But that's not what I'm talking about here. The haves and have-nots was very unrelated to money, actually, for this problem. The thing that was haves and have-nots for us, for the problem of like discoverability with community, is who has advertising and marketing ability and who does not. And that is a very different thing than, is my program important? Am I impactful? All of that kind of stuff. And so we did not have specialists evenly distributed amongst every one of our communities that could like make the perfect funny, meme photo at the right time and post it on the right channel. We do not have, the ability to decide, okay, this message should go in these places at exactly this time of day, but that person's doing that message, so I'll piggyback off of that. Like this expertise was not at all widely distributed. We of course had a bit of it, but we didn't have a lot of it. And so we needed a level playing field. And when you think about how do you make a level playing field for this diversity of groups, we realized that in order for it to be level, we had to make sure that literally everybody could make use of everything that we were doing. And so we wanted accessibility for all with no exceptions. And the no exceptions there is a very key thing that I'll talk about a little bit. So accessibility. I think at this point in UCs, it should be going as a given that we're going to have digital accessibility. That's happening for sure. But we're also talking about like able to use and able to use effectively and able to make sense of and all of those kinds of aspects of accessibility. And the no exceptions means that when you have a well-meaning group that is an expert at something. Like we have a strategic communications is our like big professional marketing department at UCLA. And they are actually very good at flyers and posters and doing the right message at the right place at the right time. But what they want, if they got what they wanted fully, it would make it impossible for the person that has no idea of how to do that kind of stuff to get their message out on a level playing field. And so 100% of the features needed to be available to 100% of people. And if the feature could not be available to 100% of people, we didn't make it. So that was a sort of defining characteristic of the system. And I'm going to hand things over to Praveen to talk about the backend system, and he'll be back later for the front end.
All right. So as most of you must be aware, university is like a city, right? We have numerous systems being used in different areas. Probably don't even have a catalog of what will be used, right? So we looked at a student affairs IT. We manage many systems. First goal was to see if we can get to a critical mass, have a big chunk of published, and then eventually we can bring in other pieces into it. So at student affairs, see now, if you think about this, right, there are many things of interest to students in terms of connecting and community, right? So registrar's office might publish all the academic calendar or professional school calendars, or what's happening around the campus, right? All that are part of communicating for the academic reasons, correct? And then if you look at student organizations, that's a big chunk that we had. If we can tackle that first, like Matthew said, we have 1,500 organizations. Each one of them publish numerous events where people can connect. So we have the system here which allows registration of org, uploading the constitution, logos, and all kinds of stuff, even manage members. But this system did not allow publishing events. So every student org would either use Facebook or Google Calendar or we don't know what, right? So, and then when COVID happened, we did not have time to integrate with all the systems. And at that time, we had recently gone live with our workflow system to automated business processes. So we were able to leverage on that and build a system that not only student orgs could use and other systems also could use. So that's one aspect of it. Then we have on the right-hand side, you see club sports. See, each department had multiple calendars per se, right? The recreation can have club sports is only one. They have Fitwell, a whole bunch of stuff that they do that somebody is going in and typing on their website on what's happening this week or today or this month or whatever, right? So all that is happening. And then DashU also targets, this is our international center. They have events for F1 visas, J1 visas, and the families of dependents of students and all kinds of stuff. All those calendars are published on their website. And that's another system that Student Affairs IT manages. So we were able to tweak some of those. And on the other side now, even the alumni community is also a big one to connect with. So we said, if we can address these, we have a bunch of critical mass covered already. So here, if you look at this, the first two are student organizations and department calendars. So that covers a big chunk. Like there are about hundreds of programs and departments. They're publishing, either putting a flyer outside of their office, which was no longer applicable during COVID, right? Or somebody's going in typing manually on their website. Unless somebody happens to go to their site, they wouldn't know about those events happening. So then this is where we leverage on the workflow system for those department calendars, which would funnel in all the events to community, which I'll talk about in a bit. And student organizations also, and this is a very, very large number of events happening on campus. And of course, when COVID happened, it went on Zoom, but publishing and making it discoverable was equally important. And those two systems are very volatile. Things change very fast. So it was important to have a real-time sync. So if something changes or event gets canceled, it's reflected right away in a few seconds. And then alumni affairs and club supports, they are the vendor systems, which means they publish maybe ICS or something, and they do not have a team or resources to modify their systems to work with ours. So we had to work with ICS, and maybe we build utility to convert and all the stuff. And international centers, all the last four ones, they're not as volatile. So they're all scheduled syncs. In a matter of few minutes, it gets pushed up to And the way we build this, we chose to build it a static site. Because number one, we did not have any usage statistics. We had no clue on what will be the volume look like for this. And also, it depends on so many systems. Any one of them could go down for days, and we have no control over. So we didn't want to create any dependency on those. So hence we built a static site and APIs here, which also facilitated on financial aid side that they want to only publish events that are related to financial aid only. So all that is rendered through static sites. That's a high-level architecture diagram here. And then we chose to stick to international standards because we may have to interact with a lot more systems. If you stick to standards like ICS and JS calendar, so ICS is the age-old standard. It has its own problems of ambiguity and difficult to work with. But so that's what JS calendar solves. It removes all the ambiguity, makes it extendable and easy to process since it's JSON based. So we're sticking to both this, supporting both for any integrations. And JS calendar is very detailed specs, as you all know. So now, when we talk about the department or program onboarding, the biggest thing is it needs to be easy to onboard without having to go through any bureaucratic approvals. So if someone wants to publish it, all we need to know is if they're a legit org on org chart, or if they already have a prominent presence on a website, we can onboard them. All we need is who you are, what's your program, and who can request the events and who can approve. That's all, and we can onboard them. So this would allow them to creating any events manually that gets pushed to community, or they can even provide, this is my ICS file URL, and we can pull it from there, okay? So this made it easy, and a lot of departments did not have any system. So it became an easy default, obviously, for them to get their events discoverable on the community. Now, approval workflow, this is where our workflow system is pretty comprehensive. It allows you to have n number of approval steps, or step could be a notification, it could be anything really, right? So we were able to leverage here because when a signatory of an org logs in, they can see all the orgs that they're part of, and they can create or manage events for each of their orgs. And in this case, approvals are important because we want to make sure that we don't allow inappropriate content to be published, right? And that was important. And so that's what approval process is. So somebody from a student org advisor committee would approve it, and then it get pushed to community because it's very visible, obviously, right? So that's that. And then to talk about front end, I'm going to bring up Matthew.
All right, thanks, Praveen. So design. So people, when they first hear design, many people just think, okay, it's pretty colors and what picture did you use, right? And we're at a tech conference, so we all know that design isn't just pretty colors and what did you use, but it's what it is, right? What is the thing is the design of the thing. And so the way most people think of this is, okay, well, we have features, those are what the thing is. And then you have some type of interaction with those features, some button or some modal pop-up or whatever it is. And the design is like how those interactions happen to make the system work. And although that is absolutely design, that is not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is that words are design. Like what words you choose to use are fundamental to what is the thing. What are you talking about? So let's talk about some of the words that we use in the system. So community.ucla.edu. This is the first word that you might see. What website are you going to? And you will note, I'm in student affairs. We're in student affairs IT. This is not the student community. This is the community for all of .ucla.edu. And so this keeps us honest. Like we have to remember that we're not just making this thing for students, although students are very important. We're also making it for staff, we're making it for faculty, we're making it for alumni. And I would argue it makes it better for students because we're making it for everybody else as well. So that's a good way to make sure that it works for everybody. Let's look at some more words. We've got UCLA community, we've got add your events, student organizations, club sports, programs and departments, calendars, and search. So these are what community is. These words, they tell you what it is. If you look at this and you're like, I think I kind of get what this is about, I'm hoping you do. That's what community is about. And because these are the words that community is about, that is our top level navigation. I wish more sites did this. Your navigation should be approximately what you're about, not the things I aspire to that I haven't completely finished yet. So we got that's the top level nav. Then we have a hero image because apparently websites need to have hero images. People expect it. Meeting expectations is generally a nice thing to have people move on. And so we have a hero image, and then we start right off with what's happening today. So on the bottom there, you can see summer 2023 language exchange, Bruin Professionals Glendale chapter meeting, and the New York Tri-State Network UCLA Cal alumni book something ... Okay, so let's talk about these event titles. The real goal here is this event for me? That's the goal of the title. So summer language exchange, I'm not currently interested in that. Glendale chapter meeting, I don't live in Glendale, that's not my thing. And the New York Tri-State Network for Cal and UCLA, I might actually be interested in that. I went to Cal and I worked for UCLA. That's my kind of thing, but I'm not in New York, so I can ignore it. And I would say that that is a successful design because I'm not interested in any of those three events. It's summer, so there's way, way fewer events on this site than there would be during the school year. Like it's kind of hard to come up with the slides for an event like this where there's basically the Alumni Association is doing most of the activity on campus right now. But during the school year, there would be 30, 40 events potentially on a day that I could potentially be interested in. And the goal isn't, I want to go to 40 events. The goal is, I, with my unique community, can find the event that I care about. And so we had to do a lot of training with departments about this because they were calling their events brought to you by my important department and also sponsored by this other partner department. The evening to remember that will ... it got cropped off. They couldn't see it. That didn't work. And so people realized when they started using this system that I can't be too flowery. I have to get to the point. I got to say who it's for and what it is. And then we'll see whether or not it works. And I'll say that these event titles have absolutely worked. My statistics to prove it are that, the Applied Physics Pizza Party event gets, 60, 70, 80 hits for that one event page. And the Bruin Bash concert that happens at the beginning of the school year has 7,000 hits. And the difference is the title and the words, and that's it. And that works to drive people to the right traffic because people are checking out, am I interested in this thing? So other ways we use words, we use day themes. So during Welcome Week, which we call True Bruin Welcome, we have these day themes of like, this is what today is all about. So we have leadership and we have social, and one of the days is open houses, right? And so this is the get to know your academic open houses or these other more formal programs. And we just put the words up there on the site and say, hey, this is open house day. We have no enforcement at all of this is open house day at the, you may not have your event here, but you can have your open house event on day 2 or day 5 or whatever you want, right? But all of the schools departments sort of get together and go, hey, that's open house day. We're going to stick with open house day. And that means that the students all know I should be going to somebody's open house today. Because if you see open house next to fun activity, you might choose to go to the fun activity. Not that open houses aren't that fun, but you might choose to go to the other activity. But this day, everyone knows, hey, this is what I should really be doing today. I got to figure out the 3, 4 open houses that are right for me. I'm going to go to that open house. So we use words to say, hey, this is the theme for the day. And it's self-enforcing, and the community sort of self-enforces that this works. Next, categories. Okay, so you have to have categories of some kind to help people figure out what is the nature of this thing. And let me tell you, coming up with a list of categories that the entirety of UCLA can agree on is an impossible task. And so we ultimately decided on, this was a whole subcommittee. We ultimately decided, though, that we're going to make people choose an audience category. So you can say that you're for freshmen, or sorry, not for freshmen, for undergrads, for graduate students and professional schools, for faculty or staff or alumni. That's it. You can say which ones are invited to this thing. A key characteristic there is that graduate events often want to make sure that undergrads know that they're not invited to those events. So that's one of the things that's trying to be achieved with that. And then we also have the category for the nature of the thing. So the categories that we ended up with are arts, cultural, deadline, educational, health, leadership, and social. You cannot pick multiple categories. You must pick only one. And you have to pick the one that's the best fit. And if you pick one that's a best fit, there are a single subcategory that you can pick underneath each of those things. But that's it. That's the categories that you have to choose between. You choose what's the main nature of my event. And those are the categories you can use. So Details to talk about how these cards work. So we have an event web page for every single event that includes buttons that you can RSVP to and a super long description and all that stuff. But that's not really the meat of the system. The meat of the system is discoverability. So the way that people actually interact with your event is the card that they see when they're browsing around. So this is what your event actually is for 95% of the system. So let's look at the details. We got the title, we talked about that. We got the time. Okay, a little bit of complexity for the details there. During COVID, a bunch of people were at home. Lots of homes are not in California. And so they were not in Pacific or time. And so we had a number of people being confused about what time of day is this thing. So if you are not in Pacific time, we automatically detect that your browser is not, your clock on your computer is not in Pacific time, and we add that it's PST or PDT, depending on the time of year. The little clock icon, I was getting tripped up by this. Might have just been me, but we had this clock icon that always said that it was 4 o'clock. And I would see it and I would think 4 o'clock. And so the clock icon now says the start time of the event every time. So if you're used to round faces and you're scanning through a list of 30 things, it fits with the actual start time. Zoom link. If you paste a location URL into the location that is a URL to Zoom, we automatically say it's a Zoom link. We don't have like this big ugly URL. We know that it's Zoom. We do this for Teams. We do this for GoToMeeting and a bunch of others. And behind the scenes for accessibility, we don't have zoom, 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 zoom when you're listening to all the links on the page. We have the ARIA labels that say Zoom meeting for website makers, office hours, timestamp, all that kind of stuff to make sure that the link is actually unique behind the scenes. Then you got a 5-line description and your categories. So you got your audience. This is for faculty and staff, and it's educational and it's about media. And then you got the organization that's throwing this event. So you can either decide, hey, I don't want to pay attention to this organization. Those events aren't interesting to me. Or you can say, I want to click on this organization and learn more about the types of events this organization does. So that's what these cards are. But really, it's about the title. And then if you like the title, you pay a bit more attention to the details. So browsing for new. That was events. Now we're going to get into the other aspect of the system, which is discovering things that you didn't know that you should look for. So it used to be the case that, and Praveen showed one of the screenshots of like a very text-heavy web page, that in order to find one of our 1,500 student orgs, you had to know what words to look for. So you would have had to have somehow found out that I want to look for some type of dragon boat racing or whatever thing you're actually interested in, right? And so if you don't know that that exists and you don't know what words to look for, you couldn't browse for it. And so this is nothing new to the world, but this was new to UCLA for this. So we had the ability to let organizations upload a picture. So we don't have pictures for events, but we do have pictures for organizations to sort of give a sense of who they are. And some people have very corporate logos, and some people have fun activity pictures, and they go very varied on that. And so we have a picture for every org if they want it, a short description, and you can browse around by the organization category that they do when they sign up. Another category here, religious. So this is an integration that we did with the Campus Life Division. They wanted to sort of highlight some additional resources on campus, praying resources, UCLA resources, and community resources. And so we link out to the campus authority on those subjects. And when you click on those links, you're taken to their website. They mimic the same structure. And then we have some additional information about that category, because if you're interested in those orgs, you might be interested in these resources as well. We would love to do more integrations like this, but it's very hard to find who is the authority on any subject on campus. People are going to argue about that. But if anyone is listening from UCLA and is the authority on anything, we would be interested in doing this kind of integration with you. So that's it for sort of the front-end design of community. And now how does community sort of work with front-end designs elsewhere? So this is the UCLA homepage. And the first link there, events, that takes you to the community website for the entire UCLA community. And this site is run by our strategic communications department, and they're a bunch of people that are very good at producing good content. And when you scroll down, you get to this section on events. These events are actually pulled from the community system directly. So they did not need to integrate with a bunch of different backends and speak a bunch of different protocols, and it's nice and confusing, technically complicated. They went to us and said, hey, we want a list of all of the events that anybody is welcome to come to. So you can't have said it's only for faculty and staff or only for undergraduate students. You have to have said it's open to everybody, or not specified who it's for, and then we sort of assume that it's open to anybody. And so they have a feed of all of the events that are open to anybody that then get sent into their system for approvals. They don't want just anything that community would accept on their homepage. They want to sort of vet to make sure, hey, could this be on their homepage? So they've accepted the holiday, that they thought that was relevant for the UCLA homepage. And it absolutely does happen during the school year that a student organization gets on the UCLA homepage with their student organization event that might be appealing to the entire community. And then those link to their event pages on community. We do the same kind of integration with financial aid. Praveen mentioned financial aid, with residential life, with the LGBTQ center, with a bunch of different departments. The events on their homepages or on some of their event pages or for their conference or whatever it is, those are actually fed dynamically through the JSON API that we build from community. And so they only enter the events on community and then it shows up on their website, because when someone's browsing their website, the people are hopefully interested in the events that their organization is throwing. And we can do more integrations like that, including mergers with like the holiday calendar. It's one that a lot of people want, is like, hey, we're closed this day, right? And so you can subscribe to my events from my department and also the holiday calendar, and then you can have both of those on your homepage, and sort of makes that kind of thing dynamically easy. All right, so 2023. Hopefully this fall, our welcome week does not look like that empty Bruin Walk. Come on, slides. And looks a bit more like this. Bunch of people very excited to get back to UCLA in person. And we're going to have the community system behind the scenes is what I'm hoping is sort of a calm, easy way to like try to make sense of it all, to sort of augment this and coexist together. So what's next? We have already programmed and are launching a very simple one-click RSVP process with our UCLA logon. So right now, departments can say, you RSVP through my special system, and people use 20, 30 different systems. So we got a one-click, very simple, I'm going to this event coming. We're going to have announcements in the next year. So that's, we're recruiting people, or we have our big, we have a deadline coming up or whatever. You can make those kinds of announcements in addition to events. And we're also doing an integration with the My UCLA, which is our main students logged in system for classes and sessions and stuff like that, where I actually got the feed from them yesterday, where community will be providing all of the UCLA events for those feeds, and they will merge it with your class sessions and class schedules. So everybody gets a unique calendar of the events that they've RSVP'd to, and all of their classes and all of their sessions. That's sort of a unified view of that person's use of UCLA. So that's what's next. And I'd like to thank you for coming, and we're up for taking questions. We're going to pass the mic around.
Yeah, hi, Matthew. In one of the slides, you talked about the submission process, and you wanted to have like clearly written language. You didn't want anything offensive. Is that a manual process that someone has to go in there and review all of those submissions before it gets uploaded, or is there some automation there?
That depends on the organization. And do you want to take this, or? Okay, so that depends on the organization. The student organizations have a review by the student department's student organizations and leadership. The group that works with student organizations, they approve or deny whether or not something can post, and their check is essentially, are they using swear words, and is this like not safe for work content? So the SOL department vets the SOL organization things for, is it problematic in the like language sense? It's not for content. Like we allow events to be of content that we might not like with. It's a matter of whether words are okay. Departments can have whatever they want. So we have some very large departments that have people that do data entry, and then they get a triggered email through the workflow system that says, hey, can you approve or deny this event? And then you can approve it or deny it. The majority of departments that use our default system, they just have, hey, these are the 5 people that can enter events, and there's no approvals at all, because they are implicitly approvers, and they can approve their own things. Okay.
Hi there. So a couple of questions. I'll be happy to pass the mic if I'm hogging up the time here. But what are you guys using for the default system? Like, what's your tech stack? Where that form building? What have you developed that in?
So this is a homegrown workflow system, and we have a homegrown form system.
Okay.
So it's piggyback on own homegrown system, really, all of it.
Okay. What's your tech stack for that homegrown system?
It's built in .NET.
.NET.
Yeah.
And for example, you said like these, what is motivating your stakeholders? So for example, alumni.ucla.edu, each of the 5 or 7 categories you defined in the beginning, undergrad, grad, and alumni and community, they can all have their own URLs, right? So what are you just, even if you're taking their calendars and feeding into this centralized community.ucla.edu, what is motivating alumni to not go to alumni.ucsd.edu, but come to community.ucla.edu? Sorry, I'm from UCSD, so the UCSD comes out by default, but yeah.
Yeah, we actually are happy for them to go to the alumni website. That we have no intention of replacing any of these community sites that already are working and already exist. What it is more is, we're hoping that people would notice those alumni events that aren't on the alumni website, and that would drive them to learn more about alumni type of events. So that's sort of the motivation behind that.
So there is a possibility that if someone from that department used your default system, and an alumni event can be on community.ucla.edu, but not be on alumni.ucla.edu? That
is possible, and some places do that. It's up to the website running. Each website can decide what events or things go on their websites, basically. And we are looking to create a more standardized way that you can just do a simple embed for any website. Right now, if they reach out to us, we'll work with them and help them make a custom solution that looks correct on their site. But YouTube embedding style simplicity is something that we would like to be able to do.
Do you have any statistics on like when you didn't have community.ucla.edu versus you have now? Have you done any survey with the stakeholders on how it's benefited them, or any after effects that you've measured?
Yes. So the main way there's a huge increase of events at the beginning of the school year. It's not just Welcome Week, it's like for the first month and a half. And the real driving factor for that is that, and we have the statistics that show the curves that show how it's driving traffic. During Welcome Week, on some days, we're getting 40, 50, 60,000 hits on the site. During winter break, we sometimes get no events for a week because it's the winter break and everything is actually dead. And so we have the statistics that show huge fluctuations in usage patterns of the site. It's hard to know how, or I think it's probably impossible to know how it impacts all sites, because UCLA depends on who you ask, but we've got maybe 2,800 websites. Yeah. And there is no centralized authority on like, here's all the statistics for all the websites. Mm-hmm. And so we can't really answer that. My team runs the student affairs websites. And so we can look at those statistics and we can see how it is improving things, but that's just student affairs. So I don't know about the entire campus.
What are you using for the student affairs websites to analyze for analytics? Google Analytics?
We're currently using Google Analytics. Yeah.
Thank you.
What was your buy-in process to get community involved to move this project forward into the design that you have now?
Unfortunately, the buy-in process was a unique situation of having COVID. So I don't know if that's
forced acceptance.
So everyone sort of at that time recognized, hey, there's this huge problem. How are we going to deal with this? So that was a major driving factor. We've been doing similar stuff just for Welcome Week for about 5-10 years. And so this is modeled a little bit after how we had managed stuff for Welcome Week. It's technologically very different, but it's modeled. We'd had a sort of model of this is how Welcome Week can work. And so we sort of grew that a lot to make this.
Yeah. Can I add something? There was a lot of hesitation for the approval for student events. So that would increase significant amount of work on the departments. So, but yeah, but it did go through because COVID was there. So
yeah.
So if you have multiple events in a day, like say you have 20 events, how do you do your ranking? How do you like, so I saw some of the events were on the UCLA homepage. Like, how do you prioritize? Like, how do you get onto the top of the list?
If you're an all-day event, you're the first events in that day. And if you're at a specific time, you're at that time.
Mhm.
And if there's an end time for your event, the shorter the event, the earlier you are in the list. So if it's a 30-minute event, it'll be the first one that shows at 11 o'clock. And then a 2-hour event would be from 11 to 1. That's it. It's
There's
just
no-
ordered
there's
by
no
time
ranking
and title.
system.
There's no ranking. We have added 2 different colored calendars. It's literally just a background color difference. One is for holidays. Those get a UCLA blue background to sort of highlight strongly that this is a holiday, and hopefully maybe you don't want to plan that event that you thought might be a good day that day because you forgot that it was a holiday. And we have one featured calendar that we added after a lot of clamoring for the very major events, and they get a gold background. But that's it. It's still in the same order, still in the same time of day. It is literally just the event title. And before we had the colors, the event titles, like the statistics, 7,000 hits for Brew and Bash versus 70 to 80 hits for like a pizza party, that those are without the colored background differences. That's what we're getting purely on titles. And there's other driving factors. I mean, people have heard of Brew and Bash through other material and all that kind of stuff, but on the website, that's all it was.
There's our online question. Do you
Yep.
QA? Do you want to take it?
Sure.
Okay. The question is, can you share any UX research that was done with the users or stakeholder that help how the content and its order on navigation or card design was determined?
UX research done to help determine the design is the gist of that question?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we've done much UX research with staff about the nature of event cards and sort of discussing with them over the years how much information they need. We used to, like during True Brew and Welcome, create custom graphics for every single event, which was crazy amount of work. And so we have a lot of research with staff around their staff wants. For students, we've been doing it on statistics and how changing something has affected. We didn't have the ability to say, hey, here are, how do I phrase this? During COVID, during the rush, we did not have the ability to plan for 3 months, which would normally have been a good idea. And so we did what we thought would work. And since then, we have analyzed it with statistics to validate whether or not it continues to work. And we're doing it that way.
My question was about building traffic to get to those eventual 7,000 hits to this landing page in your community. Any advice about how you marketed this calendar, both from an input standpoint, those uploading the info and those going there to retrieve it?
We, as the people running the community site, do not market specific events. And so we do market the community system as a thing that everyone can use. We have banner ads on some systems for saying, hey, your student org is allowed to post over there as well, and that kind of stuff. For individual events, though, we leave it entirely up to whoever's throwing the event to drive or not drive traffic to it. For major events that everyone are sort of like major tentpole features of UCLA, that there's a big marketing plan around that event and everybody knows that this big event is coming up because it's like a huge campus-wide initiative. They end up getting linked to from all over the place. And so that's one of the drivers of traffic. It's not just browsing around to find the thing. It's also that people link to community as the place to like have a place to link about the event. And that's actually one of the things about the system is that every single event has a unique URL. That's a very important aspect of sharing systems like this. So every one of those URLs also has a decent social graph sharing graphics and all that kind of stuff. And so if you share that URL, it looks nice in social media. Like making that aspect of it nice is, I believe, also helps people share the links nicely to these things.
Thank you. And my question was an emphasis on the former, meaning driving people to your calendar overall. So in addition to banners, was there some kind of a campaign where you announced we now have a calendar? Or did people somehow naturally find it with their yearning to attend events?
When it initially launched, I think we got a few emails from the chancellor saying, hey, this is the place to look. During Welcome Week, we get emails that say here, this is where Welcome Week is. And it used to be on a dedicated website. It's now on this website. That page has, I didn't pull up the live system and show you how like things fade and move out and all that kind of stuff. But that page has like sort of custom graphics, because it's a major initiative to have custom graphics for the days and all that kind of stuff. We do custom graphics for Bruin Day, which is our welcome admits to UCLA. Please come to UCLA. We want you to register. That kind of stuff.
Thank you.
I had a question about the relationship between the community.ucla.edu and what I presume probably predated COVID. I assume there was some sort of events.ucla.edu. And what's the relationship between those two, and how do people know where to go for what?
Okay. So there was nothing like this before COVID. There was a system, and there still is a system called Events Online. And that's the system that all of the organizations need to register their events with if they have, I believe it's more than 40 people coming to the event, because that goes to the fire marshal and police department as the official events on campus. They had the ability to publish some events curated on their website, and they would post 3 or 4 events, maybe 5 events a week type of scale. And so we did not have a system. That's the closest we had to a campus authority. If I'm trying to think of a campus authority, we also had My UCLA, which is the logged in student system, where departments are also able to post events there. But we really didn't have something like this at the time, and this was filling a need that we had.
Oh, there's 2 things that came to mind. One, when you were showing your calendar builder website, there was a button that said filler event. And I was just, what's the difference between a filler event and just an event?
A filler event?
Mm-hmm. It was on your slide when.
You mean these? No. One of these slides, you mean?
Yes, maybe right before that. Yeah, there it is. Right above Saturday, July 1st.
There's a filter events. There's a filter.
Oh, a filter.
Oh, yeah, this is the alumni website, the ability to filter events on the alumni website.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, another thing too, I was wondering, how does health services use your calendar? Because you were in the middle of COVID and you had all the health service demands on this, community that wasn't on campus.
Not very much is the honest answer. UCLA is 2 organizations that live together, but we are operationally quite separate. And I would welcome more integration with the health operation. We did have, like, during the beginning of COVID, we would have like announcements for like, this is where you go for official COVID information, all that kind of stuff. But that was sort of like the campus-wide branding stuff. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.